Steve Jobs. Part 1. In this video we will cover 1. Background 2. Biological and adoptive families 3. Birth 4. Childhood 5. Homestead High 6. Reed College. Stephen Paul Jobs was an American business magnate, industrial designer, investor, and media proprietor. He was the chairman, chief executive officer (CEO), and co-founder of Apple Inc., the chairman and majority shareholder of Pixar, a member of the Walt Disney Company's board of directors following its acquisition of Pixar, and the founder, chairman, and CEO of Next. Jobs is widely recognized as a pioneer of the personal computer revolution of the 1970s and 1980s, along with his early business partner and fellow Apple co-founder Steve Wozniak. Jobs was born in San Francisco, California, and put up for adoption. He was raised in the San Francisco Bay Area. He attended Reed College in 1972 before dropping out that same year, and traveled through India in 1974 seeking enlightenment and studying Zen Buddhism. Jobs and Wozniak co-founded Apple in 1976 to sell Wozniak's Apple I personal computer. Together the duo gained fame and wealth a year later with the Apple II, one of the first highly successful mass-produced microcomputers. Jobs saw the commercial potential of the Xerox Alto in 1979, which was mouse-driven and had a graphical user interface, GUI. This led to the development of the unsuccessful Apple Lisa in 1983, followed by the breakthrough Macintosh in 1984, the first mass-produced computer with a GUI. The Macintosh introduced the desktop publishing industry in 1985 with the addition of the Apple LaserWriter, the first laser printer to feature vector graphics. Jobs was forced out of Apple in 1985 after a long power struggle with the company's board and its then CEO John Sculley. That same year, Jobs took a few of Apple's members with him to found Next, a computer platform development company that specialized in computers for higher education and business markets. In addition, he helped to develop the visual effects industry when he funded the computer graphics division of George Lucas's Lucasfilm in 1986. The new company was Pixar, which produced the first 3D computer-animated feature film Toy Story, 1995, and went on to become a major animation studio, producing over 20 films since then. Jobs became CEO of Apple in 1997, following his company's acquisition of Next. He was largely responsible for helping revive Apple, which had been on the verge of bankruptcy. He worked closely with designer Johnny Ive to develop a line of products that had larger cultural ramifications, beginning in 1997 with the Think Different advertising campaign and leading to the iMac, iTunes, iTunes Store, Apple Store, iPod, iPhone, App Store, and the iPad. In 2001, the original Mac OS was replaced with the completely new Mac OS X, now known as macOS, based on Next's NextStep platform, giving the OS a modern Unix-based foundation for the first time. Jobs was diagnosed with a pancreatic neuroendocrine tumor in 2003. He died of respiratory arrest related to the tumor at age 56 on October 5, 2011. Background: Biological and adoptive families. Stephen Paul Jobs was born on February 24, 1955, to Abdul Fattah Jandali and Joanne Schiebel, and was adopted by Paul and Clara Jobs, née Hagopian. His biological father, Abdul Fattah John al-Jandali, grew up in Homs, Syria, and was born into an Arab Muslim household. While an undergraduate at the American University of Beirut in Lebanon, he was a student activist and spent time in prison for his political activities. He pursued a PhD at the University of Wisconsin, where he met Joanne Carol Schiebel, a Catholic of Swiss and German descent. As a doctoral candidate, Jandali was a teaching assistant for a course Schiebel was taking, although both were the same age. Mona Simpson, Jobs' biological sister, notes that her maternal grandparents were not happy that their daughter was dating a Muslim. Walter Isaacson, author of the Steve Jobs biography, additionally states that Schiebel's father threatened to cut Joanne off completely if she continued the relationship. Jobs' adoptive father, Paul Reinhold Jobs, was a Coast Guard mechanic. After leaving the Coast Guard, Paul Jobs married Clara Hagopian in 1946. Their attempts to start a family were halted after Clara had an ectopic pregnancy, leading them to consider adoption in 1955. Clara Hagopian's parents were survivors of the Armenian Genocide. Birth: Schiebel became pregnant with Jobs in 1954, when she and Jandali spent the summer with his family in Homs, Syria. According to Jandali, Shebel deliberately did not involve him in the process. Without telling me, Joanne upped and left to move to San Francisco to have the baby without anyone knowing, including me. Shebel gave birth to Jobs on February 24, 1955, in San Francisco and chose an adoptive couple for him that was Catholic, well-educated, and wealthy, but the couple later changed their mind. Jobs was then placed with Paul and Clara Jobs, neither of whom had a college education, and Shebel refused to sign the adoption papers. She then took the matter to court in an attempt to have her baby placed with a different family, and only consented to releasing the baby to Paul and Clara after the couple pledged to pay for the boy's college education. Steve's first cousin, Basma al-Jandali, maintains that his birth name was Abdul Latif Jandali. When Steve Jobs was in high school, Clara admitted to his girlfriend, Chrisanne Brennan, that she was too frightened to love for the first 6 months of his life. I was scared they were going to take him away from me. Even after we won the case, Steve was so difficult a child that by the time he was 2 I felt we had made a mistake. I wanted to return him. When Chrisanne shared this comment with Steve, he stated that he was already aware, and would later say he was deeply loved and indulged by Paul and Clara. Many years later, Steve Jobs' wife Laureen also noted that he felt he had been really blessed by having the 2 of them as parents. Jobs would become upset when Paul and Clara were referred to as his adoptive parents. He regarded them as his parents 1000%. With regard to his biological parents, Jobs referred to them as my sperm and egg bank. That's not harsh, it's just the way it was, a sperm bank thing, nothing more. Childhood. Paul worked in several jobs that included a try as a machinist, several other jobs, and then back to work as a machinist. Paul and Clara adopted Jobs' sister Patricia in 1957, and by 1959 the family had moved to the Monte Loma neighborhood in Mountain View, California. It was during this time that Paul built a workbench in his garage for his son in order to pass along his love of mechanics. Jobs, meanwhile, admired his father's craftsmanship, because he knew how to build anything. If we needed a cabinet, he would build it. When he built our fence, he gave me a hammer so I could work with him. I wasn't that into fixing cars, but I was eager to hang out with my dad. By the time he was 10, Jobs was deeply involved in electronics and befriended many of the engineers who lived in the neighborhood. He had difficulty making friends with children his own age, however, and was seen by his classmates as a loner. Jobs had difficulty functioning in a traditional classroom, tended to resist authority figures, frequently misbehaved, and was suspended a few times. Clara had taught him to read as a toddler, and Jobs stated that he was pretty bored in school and turned into a little terror. You should have seen us in the 3rd grade, we basically destroyed the teacher. He frequently played pranks on others at Monte Loma Elementary School in Mountain View. His father Paul, who was abused as a child, never reprimanded him, however, and instead blamed the school for not challenging his brilliant son. Jobs would later credit his 4th grade teacher, Imogen Teddy Hill, with turning him around. She taught an advanced 4th grade class and it took her about a month to get hip to my situation. She bribed me into learning. She would say, I really want you to finish this workbook. I'll give you $5 if you finish it. That really kindled a passion in me for learning things. I learned more that year than I think I learned in any other year in school. They wanted me to skip the next 2 years in grade school and go straight to junior high to learn a foreign language, but my parents very wisely wouldn't let it happen. Jobs skipped the 5th grade and transferred to the 6th grade at Crittenden Middle School in Mountain View, where he became a socially awkward loner. Jobs was often bullied at Crittenden Middle, and in the middle of 7th grade, he gave his parents an ultimatum. They had to either take him out of Crittenden or he would drop out of school. Though the Jobs family was not well off, they used all their savings in 1967 to buy a new home, allowing Jobs to change schools. The new house, a 3-bedroom home on Crist Drive in Los Altos, California, was in the better Cupertino School District, Cupertino, California, and was embedded in an environment that was even more heavily populated with engineering families than the Mountain View area was. The house was declared a historic site in 2013, as it was the first site for Apple Computer. As of 2013, it was owned by Patty and occupied by Jobs' stepmother, Marilyn. When he was 13 in 1968, Jobs was given a summer job by Bill Hewlett, of Hewlett-Packard, after Jobs cold called him to ask for parts for an electronics project. Homestead High. The location of the Los Altos home meant that Jobs would be able to attend nearby Homestead High School, which had strong ties to Silicon Valley. He began his first year there in late 1968 along with Bill Fernandez. Fernandez introduced Jobs to Steve Wozniak, and would later be Apple's first employee. Neither Jobs nor Fernandez, whose father was a lawyer, came from engineering households and thus decided to enroll in John McCollum's Electronics 1. McCollum and the rebellious Jobs, who had grown his hair long and become involved in the growing counterculture, would eventually clash and Jobs began to lose interest in the class. He underwent a change during mid-1970. I got stoned for the first time. I discovered Shakespeare, Dylan Thomas, and all that classic stuff. I read Moby Dick and went back as a junior taking creative writing classes. Jobs also later noted to his official biographer that, I started to listen to music a whole lot, and I started to read more outside of just science and technology, Shakespeare, Plato. I loved King Lear. When I was a senior I had this phenomenal app English class. The teacher was this guy who looked like Ernest Hemingway. He took a bunch of us snowshoeing in Yosemite. During his last 2 years at Homestead High, Jobs developed two different interests, electronics and literature. These dual interests were particularly reflected during Jobs' senior year as his best friends were Wozniak and his first girlfriend, the artistic Homestead junior Chris-Ann Brennan. In 1971, after Wozniak began attending University of California, Berkeley, Jobs would visit him there a few times a week. This experience led him to study in nearby Stanford University's student union. Jobs also decided that rather than join the electronics club, he would put on light shows with a friend for Homestead's avant-garde jazz program. He was described by a Homestead classmate as kind of a brain and kind of a hippie, but he never fit into either group. He was smart enough to be a nerd, but wasn't nerdy. And he was too intellectual for the hippies, who just wanted to get wasted all the time. He was kind of an outsider. In high school everything revolved around what group you were in, and if you weren't in a carefully defined group, you weren't anybody. He was an individual, in a world where individuality was suspect. By his senior year in late 1971, he was taking freshman English class at Stanford and working on a Homestead Underground film project with Chris-Ann Brennan. Around that time, Wozniak designed a low-cost digital, blue box, to generate the necessary tones to manipulate the telephone network, allowing free long-distance calls. Jobs decided then to sell them and split the profit with Wozniak. The clandestine sales of the illegal blue boxes went well and perhaps planted the seed in Jobs' mind that electronics could be both fun and profitable. Jobs, in a 1994 interview, recalled that it took 6 months for him and Wozniak to figure out how to build the blue boxes. Jobs later reflected that had it not been for Wozniak's blue boxes, there wouldn't have been an Apple. He states it showed him that they could take on large companies and beat them. By his senior year of high school, Jobs began using LSD. He later recalled that on one occasion he consumed it in a wheat field outside Sunnyvale, and experienced the most wonderful feeling of my life up to that point. In mid-1972, after graduation and before leaving for Reed College, Jobs and Brennan rented a house from their other roommate, Al. Reed College. In September 1972, Jobs enrolled at Reed College in Portland, Oregon. He insisted on applying only to Reed although it was an expensive school that Paul and Clara could ill afford. Jobs soon befriended Robert Friedland, who was Reed's student body president at that time. Brennan remained involved with Jobs while he was at Reed. He later asked her to come and live with him in a house he rented near the Reed campus, but she refused. After just one semester, Jobs dropped out of Reed College without telling his parents. Jobs later explained that he decided to drop out because he did not want to spend his parents' money on an education that seemed meaningless to him. He continued to attend by auditing his classes, which included a course on calligraphy that was taught by Robert Palladino. In a 2005 commencement speech at Stanford University, Jobs stated that during this period, he slept on the floor in friends' dorm rooms, returned Coke bottles for food money, and got weekly free meals at the local Hare Krishna temple. In that same speech, Jobs said, "If I had never dropped in on that single calligraphy course in college, the Mac would have never had multiple typefaces or proportionally spaced fonts." In next video we will cover 1972-1985-1. Pre-Apple II. Apple, 1976 to 1985. 1985, 1997, 3. Next Computer 4. Pixar and Disney. 1997, 2011, 5. Return to Apple 6. Health Problems 7. Resignation 8. Death. Hope you liked this video. Please like and share this video and subscribe our channel for more informative videos. Thanks for watching.